12 months in business is nothing at all. And people say, what do you mean? It's like, well, you look at it and think, cool, in the next 12 months, I'm going to do all this stuff. But actually, you're not. So what you do is
Yes.
you send yourself down a path of trying to achieve so much in 12 months that you couldn't possibly achieve. So what you do, you rush it. You don't do it properly. You don't achieve everything. Get more and more frustrated. When really what you should do is give yourself a 12-month target. That's so the bar is so low that you could fall over it. And then when you've achieved that and you've still got 8 months left, you could then say, oh, well, maybe I could do a bit more. And
Yeah.
where that puts you psychologically with regard to that business and your life is miles ahead of where you'll be trying to, achieve everything. And, it's the volume is vanity, profit is sanity. The number of builders that I know who start off in their 20s and 30s wanting the big building company with the big building contracts, if I could get a million
Yeah.
pound building contract. And then as they go through the process of doing that, they end up in their 50s looking for small building contracts with lots of profit in them, where they're definitely going to get paid. They're not looking for the £1 million building contracts that have got no profit in them, where they're not going to get paid because they've
Yeah.
been through that process. But it's possible these days to educate yourself about that with all the resources around you and avoid all of these mistakes. Andy and I had businesses where it was all about, well, bigger's better, but it isn't. It isn't. And especially now, so many people make an absolute fortune by providing virtual products and without even having an office.
I know.
So their overhead's zero, the cost of their product is zero, and it's all
The
profit,
marketing's
isn't it?
free.
Yeah. So it's so much easier now to make money in business than it's ever been. But people still fall into the traps. So I think it's education. People have an understanding of if you have a basic understanding of how the world works. For example, if the Fed are going to put the interest rates up, what does that mean? And if the Fed aren't going to put the interest rates up, what does that mean? And if the Feds are putting the interest rates down, what does that mean? I mean, if you go and ask 99 out of 100 entrepreneurs in their 20s, probably most of them don't know the answer to any of those three things.
Yeah.
But those sorts of things can affect your business because it's
Well,
all
it's
about
not
affecting your customers' affordability to buy your product.
interesting you should say that because I was talking to someone earlier today and they were saying they've just been to London and it's like a graveyard on a weekday night
Yeah.
whereas and they were quite well off and they couldn't understand where everyone was and all the comments that came in afterwards was that it's just been a bank holiday, it's the beginning of the month, their people are really really skint and they don't want to spend 8 quid on a glass of wine when they could get a bottle for 8 quid and things like that. It was a
Mm.
Tuesday night and all of these things that these people just hadn't considered. And the fact that, well, another client of mine called me the other day and said, which is what's prompted this series of talks and interviews, because I really want to try and help ordinary business people by talking to people who know what's going on. They basically are saying there's pubs going out of business, there's restaurants going out of business, there's festivals going bankrupt. And I know from looking at my kids' behaviour, they're definitely going to less things and they're being more choosy about where they go and what they do because every penny counts more. So if you've got a business that's customer facing and that's dependent on they haven't declared a recession, but we know we're in a recession and it might even get worse because that people are somehow picking up on this and they're not spending, are they?
Well, no, I mean, the trouble is that it depends how far you want me to go with this, but the
You go
mainstream
as far as you
media,
like.
well, the mainstream media, when I first started looking at the mainstream media, and people were saying people I know close to me were saying to me, yeah, no, it's all lies, mate. And I just think to myself, it can't be right, can it? What, the BBC, the government
Oh, please.
lying to you?
My
How
ex-husband
can,
loves the BBC.
yeah, but that was the process I went through was how that can't be right. What you're telling me, this is all lies. All of this, it can't be right, you know. And then I started to do the unthinkable. I started to do my own research.
Oh,
All steady. And one of the things, I don't know if you've ever looked at it, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to get into flat Earth, but if you look at, there's a site called Flat Earth Dave, and what he tells you is don't believe any of the videos that are on this site, just go and do your own research. And I think that's a fabulous way to deal with things. So when it comes to what we're discussing now, I don't expect anybody listening to this to take my word for anything I'm saying at all. Because if I was listening to it and I was the person I was 20 years ago, I'd be thinking, this isn't right, this can't be right. But if you actually go and check it out for yourself, you will find that we are lied to all the time.
Even if it's by omission, the fact they
Yeah,
don't talk about things that people need to know.
yes. And so what everybody thinks is if there was something going on in the world that we needed to know about, the journalists would bring it to our attention. But they haven't brought anything of this stuff to our attention, so therefore there's nothing to worry about.
I know, I know.
So,
And all the good journalists have been kicked out, haven't they? They've all had to go onto Substack
isn't it
or
great? Isn't it great
yeah,
though? Because you know
yeah.
where to look for them now. I mean, Tucker Carlson is a perfect example. I mean, I've got no idea what Tucker Carlson's worth, but if you said to me, have a guess, it's got to be 50 million.
Yeah.
So he's not doing any of the things that he's doing because he needs the money to pay the bills every month.
He's not grifting, as they call it.
No, he's not grifting.
All the denigrators of people who are trying to get the truth out to people are. That's the first thing they say is you're a grifter, i.e., you're saying this stuff for money. Whereas, most of the journalists and the doctors that are really trying to get the truth out, they're independently wealthy, which is why they're able to get the truth out because they're
Yes.
not beholden to anyone for their salary.
No. But I mean, you've only got to go and watch the Tucker Carlson Putin interview. Now, I'm not going to fall down on any side here, but watch the Tucker Carlson Putin interview, get through the first 30 minutes of pain, but
Yes,
then listen
he
to
bangs
what
on about
Putin
Russian
says.
history, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
But listen to what Putin says. But don't just listen to what he says. Look at how he says it, how he's sitting. Look at his mannerisms. And actually think about what do I think of this guy? What do I think? Do I think this guy is full of it? Do I think he's telling the truth? Do I think he's in the middle? And then what you'll have done is you'll have done your own research and then go and look at other things and do your own research and find out for yourself about all this stuff.
Also, you've used your intuition there, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business people have very strong intuition, but they don't necessarily trust it all the time. Do you trust yours? I know you do now, but did you always trust your intuition? I mean, for example, when you first met your business partner, did you know that you were going to be in each other's lives?
Um, I think I did. I didn't know how far we would go and how long we would be doing it because I didn't think like that because I was very, very today because I was, I don't know, 22 or something, 23.
Yeah.
Or maybe even younger than that actually. But I think if you do your own research on how many times you've trusted your gut and that's worked out for you, and how many times you haven't listened to your gut and that hasn't worked out for you, you'll find most of the time your gut is right most of the time. And of course, the more you research how your gut works from the point of view of, giving you intuition and helping you make decisions, the more you become in touch with that feeling and the more you understand that feeling. So it's like training yourself to refine your skills. It's like watching one of those like the Karate Kid, who gets bullied and pushed around, and then along comes the instructor who teaches him the way of karate. And what he's
Yes.
actually done is he's refined skills. And of course, although he's painting a fence, it looks a bit like, well, he's painting a fence, but he's not really, is he? He's learning a skill and becoming successful. And again, like I said, becoming successful is about establishing the quality of life you want and putting yourself in a position where you can maintain that indefinitely. So it's not about making piles of money, because making piles of money to a greater or lesser degree is easy. You have to give up your whole life, perhaps your marriage, your children, your relationship with your friends and your health, but you will make a massive pile of money. But what use is that if you're a lonely, old, sick person, it's
Yeah.
no good, is it?
No.
So again, training yourself to trust your gut. And, I never forget somebody who was in my life at one point came to my house, and my wife, he walked in the door, and we were talking about a couple of bits and pieces, and I signed some paperwork. He left, and it was all good, no problems at all. And my wife said to me, she said, I really don't like him. I really don't like him.
Oh,
I've got
yeah.
a terrible feeling about him. I went, oh, don't be silly, love. And he turned out to be a very unpleasant person. And of course, if I'd have listened to her then, instead of going, oh, don't be silly, love, it's
Yeah.
fine,
She's
I
very
could have,
intuitive, your wife, isn't she?
yeah, I could have
Oh,
avoided some
well,
pain.
mate.
But it wouldn't have been a case of listening to her. It would have been a case of listening to her, bearing it in mind, and then watching how he behaved over the next few months. And then
Yeah.
I would have actually gone, oh, actually, no, this
Mm.
guy's bad for me. I don't want him in my life. And I could have nicely engineered him out. So busy being busy and so busy running a business and being whoa, going from meeting to meeting and being successful and, holding the mobile phone to the ear and telling them buy, sell, sell and all that. Um, you don't, and slowing down is another massive piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Just slow down because there isn't a rush. And as a friend of mine always says, if you need an answer now, it's no.
That's a good
Um,
one. Talking
because
of you mentioned, I don't want to go too far for further past this, but you mentioned a
sure,
minute ago about painting fences and meeting a mentor. You acquired a mentor, what, halfway through your business life, or did you have one from the early days?
we met a couple of people along the way who were helpful to us for a little while. Nice people. Part of the problem that we've had with mentors, and we've never had a problem with a mentor, but part of the problem we've had with mentors is that they need to sit us down and slap us around the face and go, listen, you couple of idiots. And this is because we weren't listening, because they were being too nice. They were saying, well, if they're not going to get the point, we weren't in the business of working out what they were trying to say. We needed someone to spell it out to us
Yeah.
and sit us down and, swear at us and say, listen to what I'm saying, you idiot, and other words like that, idiot.
Do you do that
Um,
with your son's friends? Do you give it to them straight, or do you hold back a bit, knowing that they have to make their own mistakes to some degree?
the trouble is that there's only so much information that anyone, including me, can take on at one time.
Yeah.
There's only so much input you can take. So I tend to sort of, if people that want to talk to me about stuff, I tend to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And then, so for example, the first thing if somebody was talking to me, someone came
Yeah,
to see
let's
me and
let's
said,
let's do that. Let's role play. I'm a new
okay,
I'm a new
okay.
business owner, or someone who's in business but not doing as well as I'd like, and I want your help. What would you do?
Well, the first thing I do is ask you a load of questions to establish what it is you know about the fundamentals of business.
Yeah.
So I'd ask you about what your turnover is, what your gross profit is, what your overhead is, how you break that overhead down between fixed and variable, and let's see your cash flow. And then we'd see what you could answer. Because if you said, well, I don't know what my turnover is, and you don't know what your gross profit is, and you haven't got a cash flow, then we need to fix those things first. Because it's like setting off across the Atlantic in a boat with a hole in the bottom of the boat, no compass, and no food. It's not going to happen, is it?
No. But even
So,
experienced business people, I mean, when I first met you, you were the person who taught me how to run a cash flow properly because
oh, it's amazing.
I'd already asked my bank manager and my accountant how businesses run their money, and neither of them could tell me because obviously they were employees. But
Hmm.
it wasn't until you gave me a really practical solution for running my money on a week by week basis and I've shared that with so many people, and it changes people's lives completely.
Oh, a cash flow is I'm not being funny, but a cash flow is on a basic level an absolute fundamental, and you literally I mean, you can run a business without one because I ran businesses for years without a cash flow.
Uh,
And that was mainly because there weren't such things as spreadsheets at that time,
Right.
or PCs. But, I was flying by the seat of my pants for years. Not only is it a fundamental, but it is such an intuitive tool, and it tells you so much about the business. Just a simple cash flow will tell, I can show you how, I don't mean you, but you as in a person sitting in front of me who runs a cash flow. So someone comes to see me, I ask them the fundamental questions. If they haven't got the fundamental answers, then we've got to build that first. So then it's a case of, right, okay, this is what you need to do. This is how it works. You go away and do that. Come back and see me next week with all that stuff. And then we'll
Yeah.
build from there. And then what I need to, once they understand the fundamentals of these different things, we then start talking about, okay, so what are you doing wrong? What are all these costs? What are all these expenses? Do you need those things? How does that work? Why have you got that? And then we look at all the things you're doing right. And then we look at how we can make the things you're doing right better. So there's all these stupidly obvious things that most people don't notice. So somebody said to me once, he said, let me ask you this. If you had a business turning over £5,000 a week that was making £500 a week profit, net profit after everything, how would you double your profit? And I said, well, I'd get my turnover up to 10 grand a week. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, you
Hard
don't. You
to
put your
do
you put your prices up by 10%.
10%. Is that all it takes to double your
Well, because
turnover?
your turnover is £5,500 a week, but everything else remains the same, doesn't it? You're in the same premises with the same staff and the same products and the same. All your costs stay the same. So instead of making £500 a week out of 5 grand turnover, you make £1,000 a week out of 5.5 grand turnover. So it's not a case of you just do that, but it's understanding the fundamental of growing your business doesn't necessarily mean you have to grow your business. You don't have to grow your business with more people, more premises, more equipment, more plant, more machinery, more. There's other ways. And that's one of the things that if you look around at companies, and I'm using Amazon as an example, because everybody's heard of Amazon. Amazon make a fortune because they've refined it down. They make everything. They make they make savings everywhere that could possibly be made, and they make profits everywhere that could possibly be made. And they're constantly working on that. So working on your business is a completely different thing to working in your business.
Yeah.
Running your business day to day is a completely different thing to working on your business. And that was one of the things that the mentor we had, who's still friends with us now, taught us, is that you need to take time out of running the business and you need to sit down and you need to throw ideas around, preferably with somebody else who isn't anything to do with the business.
Yeah.
So the guys I saw recently, 2 young lads, 25 and 22, something like that. Lovely boys. I've known them since they were, born basically.
Little.
And I was chucking some ideas at them about their products. And I said, well, how else? I said, have you thought about this idea for marketing? And they went, oh no, I didn't think of that. I said, and I was coming up with these ideas because I'm not in the business.
Yeah.
Because I'm not thinking like they're thinking. I'm outside of their world. And one of the things I came up with was, so I'm trying that I don't want to tell you what business they're in because it's not
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
fair on them. But I said to them, what about making things more affordable? And they said, oh, we don't want to put our prices down. I said, no, I said, making it more affordable. So I explained to them the difference between price and cost. So the price of something is 40 grand. But if it only costs you £199 a month, that's the cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why people buy expensive cars, because they don't buy the car, they buy the cost. And that's how the car manufacturers are now able to sell people on these PCP things, where they bring, because of the way they structure it, which is basically a lease, they get the monthly payment right down to entice you to buy the new car. Whereas if you go back 40, 50 years, you couldn't do that. You had to get a loan and pay it off in 3 years. So people couldn't afford those cars because you had to clear it in 3 years. So they've found ways to get you to buy things you can't afford. And what I said to these guys was, I said, well, make it more affordable. And they said, well, I don't understand. I said, well, you've heard of Klarna, haven't you? And they went, yeah. And I went, there you go then. They went, oh, God, of course. You know, so you can buy your product, spread it over 6 months or whatever it is. I don't know how it works. Is it Klarna?
Yeah, I know. I don't, well, I
Yeah.
don't. I've heard of it. Yeah,
One of these short-term
yeah.
financing things, you know.
And Amazon do it as well. They you know they offer you to pay in installments, and they're providing
Yeah.
the finance essentially. The
Yeah.
broker they're the broker between the. And the other thing that Amazon do that just popped into my head is they watch and see what's selling like bucket loads
Yeah.
from the Amazon sellers who've brought either sourced the product in China or somewhere like that and then brought it to Amazon, and then they start making their Amazon Basics range or their Amazon Essentials
Yep.
range. So they start, I mean, they've got, oh my God, it's so genius, the business model.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, I
people
find it
people don't like
brilliant to
it, but it is
watch.
genius.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to actually go to work, but it's interesting to watch and discuss.
Yeah,
But yeah, so there's all these different talking to somebody who isn't in the business you're in
yeah,
can sometimes be very frustrating because they may not understand the business you're in. But by having to explain to somebody that's not in your business how your business works, you learn more about your business
yeah.
because you suddenly realize things about your business that you didn't realize before you started explaining it to someone.
Yeah. And also you uncover your own assumptions, limiting beliefs, negative beliefs. And the other thing, if you can get someone who's good at what's going on in the outside world as well. I mean, look, as I said earlier, looking back to what was coming in 2007, 2008, 2009, I would have behaved so differently to how I behaved. I mean, I had the best year ever in my business in 2009. And then January 2010, we had to close the business. And I would have behaved so differently in the 3, 4, 5 years previously if I'd known what's coming
Mm,
on the big financial world stage. Unbelievable.
absolutely. And one of the lessons is to not have everything on the line with the business. So there's people who, there's people who they're living in a nice house, they're running a business, everything's good. And then the business gets into trouble. So what they do is they refinance the house.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this engrossing interview with Greg Porter. He's only just getting warmed up, let me tell you that.